Hello, I'm Garry Brents. First of all, thank you for having me here. Sorry I couldn't be presenting live due to other obligations with work, but thankfully I'm able to make a video here to present to you. Originally from Torrance, California, where I was born, and but I've lived in Texas most of my life. Pretty much a little over 20 years now. I'm a musician that mainly focuses on home studio recording. I record everything here, at least for the last several years, 7 years. But I've been recording and producing, mainly self-producing since 2004. I started recording through kind of the means of tape decks prior to where I am now. But I really started tackling songwriting and like composition and just like more techniques as time went on. So kind of like 2004 to like 2009 or so, I started really getting into learning a lot about recording, engineering, and producing and songwriting. And with all that, I've had various music projects over the years since then, but my main active projects now are Coronaire, Gone Mage, and Homeskin, and then also a project called Levamir. And I'm really constantly kind of keeping myself busy with recording and writing projects and a lot of collaboration as well. So that was kind of just a brief summary of my history as a musician. I'm going to go into what I feel is the ethos of a couple niche music genres. One is chiptune and the other is black metal. For instance, one of my projects, a solo project, Gone Mage, is a fusion of those two in varying degrees. This is a combination that is not necessarily brand new, but certainly very underexplored or underutilized. So I kind of sought to really bring those two really like disparate genres together a couple of years ago with an album called Phase Out by my project Coronaire. So that album itself kind of fused those sounds, but also a mixture of other things like hardcore punk, electro, a little bit of like hip hop and indie rock. So it was really kind of everything in the kitchen sink of like things that I liked, and the other member. Karna is a 2-person project. With that said, it led me to creating Gone Mage, where I mostly have aimed for more of a focus on chiptune and black metal specifically, but with room to still explore other genres and styles. I would say this all began with nostalgia. This direction comes from an appreciation for growing up in the 90s with like Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, Game Boy, and even Nintendo. I guess I kind of hold on to the limitation of 8-bit or 16-bit music, as well as the art that were presented in those mediums. They were things I've always loved and held on to. Recent years, just kind of being more at home. I currently have been working from home since March 2020. That kind of led to my memory of the past and wanting to use that nostalgia as more of an expression. That's something that's mostly never been done before, with the combination of you know, chiptune and black metal specifically, and that sort of is also galvanized with an accompanying aesthetic by like self-imposed restrictions of using pixel art, you know, like art styles that were used back then, instead of contemporary or like conventional means of digital art forms. So I guess let's talk about these two genres. Chiptune is essentially a form of purely electronic music, typically created for video games, most notably arcade machines of the late 70s, of course early 80s. It's essentially a part of early computer music. A band that I love called Yellow Magic Orchestra were, I believe, the first band to sample or incorporate arcade sounds in a published album. I think it was in like the late 70s. So they were pioneers of computer-based synthesized music. I won't go down like a comprehensive history of the genre, but throughout the rest of the 80s and 90s, it was, it became a lot more popularized. Making music in this manner obviously improved technologically, especially with each new like video game console having a little bit less limitations than their predecessors. This kind of went hand in hand, I guess, with what a composer could achieve. And when I say that, I guess limitation by necessity. That's something you could say is a cornerstone of chiptune. There's kind of a beauty in having that limitation because it forces you to be absolutely creative in extracting what you can express there with that limitation. That's another big element of what drew me into combining that style with, say, with black metal or like with punk. For the most part, those are styles that became known, I guess, or at least, started with a lot more limitation and minimalism within the confines of like rock and metal. Originally, I would say black metal was a genre defined by three bands: Venom, who essentially coined the term, Bathory, and Hellhammer, who later became Celtic Frost. In essence, it was born out of what's called speed metal and thrash metal, but much darker and much harsher, which definitely ramped up throughout the mid to late 80s and especially the 90s in terms of getting harsher and darker imagery, lyrics, everything like that. And I guess like with the touching on the limitation, it wasn't necessarily technically proficient music for the most part. Wanted to rely more on atmosphere. Now that's going more into the late 80s and 90s style of black metal. It really wanted to harness pure like energy, passion, quote unquote evil, or evil imagery at least, especially in the 90s. And throughout that decade, it kind of forked into quite a few different schools of thought and approaches, sometimes much more melodic and grandiose, symphonic even, which, kind of might have some underlying, how shall I say it, a primitive form of me combining like something electronic like chiptune with black metal, because they were using like a lot of keyboards and electronic based instruments or methods, not necessarily chiptune though. But anyway, yeah, so there was just a lot of offshoots of the style, especially going into the late 90s and the 2000s. There's more technical styles of it, combining death metal elements along with other offshoots of other genres. Throughout the 2000s and beyond until now, it's been a very malleable genre, and I think that both chiptune and black metal kind of share that sense of malleability while simultaneously having that rooted beauty and limitation. So my process is like combining, two very limited things into something new, into something unique. And my process, I'll go into that. So my process usually starts with guitar and programming drums through the use of MIDI. This becomes my foundation for any given song, or at least, maybe 90% of anything that I make starts in this manner. Once I kind of deem the structure complete or near finished, is when I begin to embellish and fill the gaps with synth, bass, vocals, especially for Gone Mage. Although sometimes I start composing with synth, I've been starting to experiment there as a launching point through like chord progressions and then building everything else upon that, which has been pretty fun. I would say my methods are derived from analog equipment and digital software, digital means. So it's a hybrid approach. I know there are old school, I guess like naysayers against using emulations to create chiptunes specifically, which is typically recognized as fake bit as opposed to 8-bit. But I personally believe, and I think others too, especially now, that a sound for chiptune or any genre can be achieved by almost any means and not be seen as inferior if the end result is objectively similar. It's just different means to the same end or a similar end when it comes down to it. With that said, that's why I like the hybrid approach that I've been doing. I find a lot of fun in both methods. Like the analog has that absolute pure restriction of limitation. It's very kind of old school approach. And that goes back to when I was starting to record with tape decks. Like you literally only have, like the built-in mic in the tape deck or an external mic. And, you've just got stop, record, rewind, fast forward. So there's definitely a beauty there in limitation, kind of forcing you to almost, get it right or approach it differently in terms of how you're composing and recording. On the flip side, the emulation or modern tools allow me to compose differently this way, at least for me, because I am using MIDI. So it's sort of like a surgical approach. Like I can see every single note individually. I can edit, recompose, rethink of what I want to do in any certain section of a song for an album, or add to it, subtract, anything like that. So I kind of get the best of both worlds. It's really about tapping into different tools in a toolbox to reach the vision that I have in my head whenever I sit down to compose a song and album. And I'm sure many others who have a similar hybrid approach would agree. With all that said, I find that the combination of these two genres, chiptune and black metal, creates a very unique sound that can be both aggressive and melodic, serious and whimsical, uplifting and contemplative. It's kind of you're using like the pleasing retro sounds of the electronic chiptune elements, providing a contrast to the much harsher elements of black metal and or punk. And using old mediums and methods combined with updated technology is something that results in a sound that is both nostalgic and modern. I guess in a nutshell, this is what I consider retrofy, or to retrofy something, similar to the mindset of making something lo-fi. You can check out my music at lilangisla.bandcamp.com. That's lilangisla.bandcamp.com, which hosts all of my projects and various releases. Thank you.